My name is Evelyn Carter, and at 63, I finally understand that life is not measured in years, but in the weight of the secrets we carry and the strength it takes to set them down. I look at my hands today and see the map of a woman who has survived 1,000 storms, some of my own making and others forced upon me by a world that rarely favors the lonely. My story is a long one, woven from threads of gold and iron, of beautiful illusions and shattering truths that took me decades to accept. It is a story of a mother who gave until there was nothing left of her soul, only to find that she had to burn her old life down to finally breathe. I remember the exact moment my life split in two, the day Ryan's father walked out. It was a Tuesday. The air was heavy with the scent of impending rain, and the apartment felt smaller than it ever had before. He didn't scream or shout. He simply packed a single suitcase and told me he wasn't built for the suffocation of fatherhood. He looked at 5-year-old Ryan, who was playing with a wooden truck on the floor, and promised he would call by the end of the week. That promise became a ghost that lived in our hallway, a phantom ring we both listened for but never heard. I sat on that peeling linoleum floor that night, pulling Ryan into my lap, and I felt the terrifying cold of being truly alone in the world. I whispered to him that everything would be okay, a lie I told so many times that I eventually began to believe it myself. The years that followed were a blur of exhaustion, coffee, and the constant, dull ache of a back that never got enough rest. I became a woman of two worlds, neither of which truly saw me for who I was. By day, I was the canteen lady, a nameless face in a hairnet serving lukewarm mash and gravy to children who looked through me as if I were made of glass. I wiped away their spills and cleared their trays, collecting the fragments of their discarded lunches like a scavenger of the mundane. By night, I was the silent guardian of the city library, a shadow moving between the stacks of old, smelling paper and ink. I mopped the floors until they shone like mirrors, watching my own tired reflection follow me from the history section to the mysteries. I loved the library because the books didn't ask anything of me. They just offered their stories while I offered them my labor. I worked until my fingers were cracked and my eyes were rimmed with red, all to ensure that Ryan never felt the sting of poverty. I made sure his world was colorful, even when mine was shades of gray. I woke up at 4:30 a.m. every single morning to bake fresh bread so he could have the best sandwiches in school. I stayed up until midnight sewing patches onto his jeans so he wouldn't look like the boy with the runaway father. I taught him how to tie his laces with a double knot so he'd never trip, and I taught him how to look people in the eye so they'd never see his fear. He was my masterpiece, my singular focus, the one thing in this world that I had done right. When he excelled in school, I felt a rush of adrenaline that replaced the need for sleep. When he got into a prestigious college, I walked to the park and cried for 3 hours, not out of sadness, but out of the sheer relief of having carried him to the top of the mountain. But the mountain was higher than I thought, and the air at the top was thin. Ryan grew into a man who was brilliant and capable, but he also grew into a man who forgot the texture of my hands that had built his ladder. Then came Scarlett, the woman who would eventually become the architect of my greatest sorrow. She was beautiful, yes, but it was a cold, calculated beauty that made me feel like an uninvited guest in my own son's life. I tried so hard to love her, to be the mother-in-law of her dreams, but she didn't want a mother. She wanted a spectator. I cooked the meals of my childhood for her, and she pushed them away, claiming they were too heavy, too old-fashioned. I bought her gifts that took me 3 shifts at the library to afford, and I would find them later in the back of her closet, still in their tissue paper. Then the grandchildren arrived, Emily and Lucas, the lights of my fatting life. I wanted to hold them, to smell their hair, to tell them stories of their father when he was small and brave. But Scarlett and Ryan built a fortress around them, a wall made of busy schedules and private family time. I spent my 61st birthday sitting in my quiet kitchen, looking at a cake I had baked for them, waiting for a car that never turned into the driveway. I told myself it was okay, that they were just living their lives, that a good mother stays in the background. I was a fool who mistook my own erasure for grace. During those lonely years, Robert was my only light. Robert Downey, a man who didn't care about my tired eyes or my stained aprons. He was a carpenter, a man who understood how to fix things that were broken, and he spent 5 years trying to fix my heart. We bought a house together in the countryside, a place with a wide porch and a garden full of lavender. "The kids will love it here, Evie," he would say, his voice like warm honey. "We'll build them a swing set." But the swing set was never built because Robert's heart gave out one winter morning while he was shoveling snow. I lost my anchor, my partner, and my witness to the world all at once. For 8 years after his death, I lived in that house as a museum curator of my own grief. The breaking point didn't come with a bang. It came with a text message. This Christmas was supposed to be the one, the reconciliation, the next year that finally arrived. I spent every penny of my savings to make the house a wonderland for Emily and Lucas. I bought the expensive coats, the wooden trains, the velvet dresses, and the best cocoa money could buy. I was awake at 4:00 a.m., my heart racing like a young girl, waiting for the sound of their tires on the gravel. And then the phone buzzed on the counter. "Plans changed. Scarlett wants a private Christmas. Don't call." The silence that followed that message was the loudest sound I have ever heard. It was the sound of 40 years of sacrifice hitting the floor and shattering into a million pieces. I didn't cry this time. I felt a strange, cold clarity wash over me, like a fever breaking. I realized that Ryan was not the boy I had raised. He was a stranger who used my love as a resource to be mined. I called the real estate agent before the sun was fully up and told her to list the house for whatever it would take to sell it today. I went to the bank and saw the trail of blood, thousands of dollars funneled out of my accounts by Ryan. He had stolen my retirement, my Robert's legacy, and my peace of mind to pay for Scarlett's designer bags and their hollow life. I cut the tether. I blocked the cards. I rewrote my destiny in a single afternoon. I went to Barbados because I wanted to see a horizon that wasn't blocked by walls. I sat on the beach and watched the tide come in, realizing that the ocean doesn't care about my sacrifices, and that was the most liberating thought I've ever had. But the world has a way of bringing you back to the truth. The phone call from the police revealed the depth of the rot in my son's house. They were arrested for a massive white-collar fraud, but the real crime was what they had done to the children. Emily and Lucas were living in a house of cards, neglected and used as props for their parents' social media lies. In that courtroom, I didn't look at Ryan with the eyes of a mother. I looked at him with the eyes of a judge. He was a man who had traded his soul for a reflection of success, and now the reflection was broken. Now my house is small, but it is loud with the right kind of noise. Emily and Lucas are with me, learning that love doesn't have to be a debt you owe. I bake cookies not to please a son who doesn't care, but to see the genuine smiles of 2 children who finally feel safe. I have learned that you cannot save people who only want to use you as a life jacket while they try to sink you. I am Evelyn Carter. I am 63. I am a mother who stopped being a victim and started being a woman. And for the first time in my life, I am not waiting for a phone call. I am the one calling the shots.